guys, welcome back to Scott Family Homestead. Today we are in the garden. I'm going to do a little garden tour while harvesting. I've got a couple of baskets today and I think we're going to fill them up. My husband and I have been traveling for the last 3 days and we had somebody watching the farm for us and they did pick green beans and water everything for us, which is amazing. But now it is time to get in there and get all the other things. I'm going to give you a look at everything that we have growing in the high tunnel. I also have a garden out here that we're going to look at. I'll show you some of our successes and some of our failures. It's important to note that this late in the season, I kind of stop fighting all of the weeds. It's also important to note where we are located. So if you are new here, welcome. We have so many new subscribers and I'm so happy you guys are all here. We are farming in northern Wisconsin. We have a very short growing season, about 120 days. Because of that, we primarily focus on raising meat. So we raise meat chickens, turkeys, pork, beef. We added beef in this year, so that's new to us. As of right now, the only thing in terms of meat that we buy from the grocery store is beef. So we're really excited in October to take our first steer into the butcher. But we do grow a lot of our vegetables here as well. I do a ton of canning, so there'll be lots of canning videos to come. I also have some already on my channel if you're interested, especially in canning tomatoes. I try to put up as much fruit and vegetables from our farm as we can, but we do still supplement from the grocery store. We have a family milk cow that meets a lot of our dairy needs. And so really overall, we are growing a lot of our food here on this farm in northern Wisconsin. We have a very short growing season. In that time, we have to try to grow a large amount of food. We've got 4 kids. And we are feeding a lot of people. With that being said, our garden is going to look a lot different than the southern gardens that you're used to seeing from your gardening friends and a lot of people on YouTube. Things don't grow as big here, they don't grow as quickly here, and that is a big reason why we got our high tunnel. I have a video about this high tunnel and building it, putting it up, and all the details of it. It's from Growers Solution. We absolutely love it. It is saving our gardening season this year with the extra rain that we've gotten. We've been able to control the environment a lot better here in the high tunnel. So we're going to start in there. I'm going to start in this little garden out front and show you what we have going on, and then we'll work our way into the high tunnel where the bulk of our harvesting is going to happen today. I did consider cleaning all this up, all the kids' stuff, my little plant graveyard over here, but I figured we'd go for more of a real life garden tour today. Okay, so out here I have 4 raised beds. These are just the really cheap Amazon raised beds. I looked them up this morning. They're currently on sale for $25 per bed. They're normally about $30. I will link them if you're interested, but let me show you in a little more detail what we're working with here. These are super cheap garden beds. Like I said, about $25 to $30, and you get what you pay for. It's definitely a cheap version of some of the raised beds that you can get out there. It comes in pieces, and you put all of these little screws in each of these little panels, and you can build your beds out to the size that you would like. I've been able to grow quite a bit in here. So I've got cabbages that I've grown in here. I've got kale, flowers on the end. I have newly planted carrots down here. And then on the back side, I'll show you, I've got my cattle panel arches with pole beans on them. So I filled these with a mixture of just a plain garden soil and a potting soil. It does cost quite a bit to fill these unless you are starting with compost and sticks and things like that on the bottom. But I chose to do just from our garden center soil, bagged soil, and so it did cost a bit to fill them. You can see I didn't fill them all the way. I left some space in here, so next year I can just top this off. And with your raised beds, you'll see they settle out quite a bit. So you can always top them off with compost as the years go on and keep adding to this, and it's really just that initial year investment. But like I said, this is not comparable to some of the name brand beds that you see out there. It's a very accessible garden bed for those that do not want to spend a lot of money or can't spend a lot of money on gardening and want to get started. I'm curious to see how they maintain their shape over time. I feel like they will have some flex to them. They probably will lose their perfectly oval shape over time. But for what I was doing out here, I have 4 garden beds out here. And my little bunnies in the back. And these are here to hold my cattle panel trellises because I don't have the vertical space at the moment in the high tunnel. And so I wanted to be able to grow all my pole beans out here. And so this made that possible for me for a pretty small price when you compare to a lot of the other choices out there. So I'll show you what I've got in each of these beds. This one we kind of talked about. We've got pole beans going up and over. So this arch is a full-size cattle panel, and they're about 4 feet apart. In this bed over here, we've got our carrots, and the beans are looking much better on this side. They're growing up really nicely, and they have started to flower. We have April over here. She's our Holland Lop. She lives inside during the winter time, but she comes out here for the summer, and she's able to get fresh garden veggies every day. So this is a really good spot for the bunnies. We've got another bunny over here. This is Marbles. He is our mini Rex, and he is also loving being outdoors. We have a couple of Greenstalks over here, which have died back quite a bit because I mostly do greens in here. I do the orange hat tomatoes in here, and I love that. They're very productive, tiny little tomato plants, great for snacking. And then the whole top of this is 2 different types of nasturtiums. They're kind of nearing the end of their life as well. Over here I did the little Tom Thumb peas on the top of that one. Those are dying back. It's much too hot for those right now, but that was really fun. The kids loved that. They ate all of those peas. And then I've got just a little bit of basil in here. These were just extra plants that I plugged in where I had extra space. This garden bed here, we have our marigolds. We've got the curly leaf parsley. That's my favorite parsley to grow. Some rosemary. I just trimmed these back and did a big load in the freeze dryer, so that's why they're cut way back. We've got oregano and thyme. These are the 2 plants that I purchased this year. Everything else that you see in my garden was planted from seed here on our farm. We have a huge radish that is going to seed that the kids didn't get to. They ate all the rest of these. Some more basil in here, and then lots of celery. These are my purple potted pole beans that I saved seeds from our previous homestead and planted here. So that's fun, a little nod to my old garden. And in our last raised bed here, we have a few more carrots, as you can see, a little bit of kale. I just harvested a great big cabbage from here. And then I have these little leftover tomatoes, which are actually growing tomatoes. And most of these were either leftovers or, like in the case of this one, it snapped off and I stuck it into a jar of water and re-rooted it and then planted it in here. I don't expect these to do a lot. They're just the extras, but it is really fun to watch them grow. So that is our little entrance garden. I've got toys out here for the toddler. She spends a lot of time out here with me. And now it's time to head into the high tunnel. What I'm going to do first is roll up the sides and get some airflow going in there. I can tell it's already heating up. This high tunnel is primarily for production. We do have some just pretty things added in, but you're going to see it is mostly tomatoes and peppers. We also have cucumbers, melons, beans, and a few other things scattered throughout. So I'm going to show you as we go through and harvest some of these things, kind of how things are going. It is early August. This high tunnel got planted in early June, so we're about 60 days into this. Everything you see in here was started from seed on our farm. So this is a labor of love, and while the weeds have gotten away from me a bit, I do want to show you my perfectly imperfect garden. When you first walk in, the first thing you'll see, I've got these 2 little garden beds of zinnias. They are just a mixture of seed packets. Everything that I had left for zinnias this year, I planted just randomly in the couple of areas where we planted zinnias. Next up we have this area, which is cucumbers. These are all pickling cucumbers. They're growing up this little trellis that we made. Behind here is empty. It's mostly weeds now. This was where all of our garlic was planted, and now we're just letting the cucumbers grow up and over and take over that space. I picked cucumbers out of here last night. I got several really decently sized pickling cucumbers. So I don't think we'll have to harvest anything today, but we'll take a look for sure. Everything at the moment is kind of this size. This one's a good one. I do like this trellis and the way we set this up because you can come through the back side. A lot of times you get cucumbers that are hanging down through here. Like this one. This one is yellowing. It looks like it was not pollinated. Oh, there's one right there. That's probably about good. This, where it's kind of pinched in on the end, can also mean incomplete pollination, which is to be expected in a high tunnel. I see quite a few flies and bugs in here pollinating these plants, and so I haven't bothered to hand pollinate any of the cucumbers. We're getting enough to make the amount of pickles that we need for our family, so just an extra step that I'm not going to bother with, but you definitely could if you wanted higher production. This one probably will not taste very good. It went overripe for sure. You can tell by the coloring of it, especially on this end. It's almost orange. So this one you could have kept going for seed, but I want more cucumbers, so I'm going to pick everything out of here. This one will get fed to the animals and they will love it. Up the entire side here, and then on the other side as well, we have contender beans. And this side is ready to harvest. We planted this side first. There are so many beans in here. I have pulled about 8 pounds out of this row so far, and we're gonna pick today. I got these seeds at our local hardware store last year. They were selling them by the pound for really, really cheap. So we are gonna be growing contender beans for a while here. I grew all of these plants, plus all of the ones on the other side, from that one pack that I bought. And a lot of these I'm freezing. I will make some dilly beans. The kids really like dilly beans, and so I'll pickle some of them. And then I might can some depending on how much I get, but I do have canned green beans left over from last year, and so I don't want to keep making a bunch if we're not going to finish them off. But this is going to be a project to come through here. I have enlisted some help, my little farmhand over here. And we're going to go ahead and pick all these beans and see what we get. This is all the green beans. It took us 20 minutes, the two of us, to pick it. Quite a bit. Probably 5 or 6 pounds. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with all this. Maybe I'll put some in the farm stand. The other thing we've done with green beans that we like is making them into freeze-dried snacks. They become like little veggie straws. So what I like to do is just chop them up into little pieces, and then we salt them and then put them in the freeze dryer, and they become little garden snacks. So maybe I'll do that with some of these. It's a little bit more labor intensive than just blanching and freezing them, but we'll see. We got a lot of work ahead of us and even more coming. We haven't even started picking from the other side, so lots and lots of green beans. Okay, next up we're going to get into our peppers here. So the way I plant my peppers, I've got 2 rows of sweet peppers. The kids know that those are safe to eat, and then I've got 2 rows of hot peppers, and they still will actually snack on those depending on what they are, but at least they know they're getting into hot peppers. Nobody wants to bite into a hot pepper that they think is a sweet pepper. So let me show you some of the varieties we grew this year. These first few varieties I have marked as jalapenos. I do have these on the end that I do not think are jalapenos. I made salsa with these and holy moly was it hot. And they're kind of more pointed than I would expect a jalapeno. So does anybody know what these are? I used like 4 of these in one tray of roasted salsa. So we ended up making it into a soup instead. Back here I've got poblanos. Those are getting nice and big. Those grew really well in here. These are, see if I can say it right, Boina mulata peppers. They're like a chili pepper and they are purple. They kind of turn pink as they ripen. The kids actually tried one of these. They said it was very spicy. I have not tried them myself. The plants did not grow very large in here. Over on the other side I do have my serranos. These guys are still little yet. but they're coming in. And these plants are nice and big, so they should be pretty productive once they get going. These plants are lemon spice jalapenos, and so I have not grown those before. I think they're going to ripen to a yellow, but just a fun variety of jalapeno that we're doing. And then at the end of this row, I have my eggplants, Antigua eggplant, and I have not seen flowers on them yet. I think it's just starting. I think there's one right there. And so we'll see what comes of that. And then I just have some chili peppers. These are my cayenne peppers, so they are coming in. I'm hoping to powder most of these, freeze dry them and powder them. My favorite thing to do lately is to freeze dry things and make them into powders. It's really a space-saving way to preserve some of our vegetables, and then you can use it in your cooking and get that kick or that flavor. And so a lot of my peppers, especially the hot peppers, that's what's going to happen to those. We've got a whole bunch of volunteer sunflowers, and some of them ended up inside the high tunnel. And so we've got those kind of on our end rows here. These are notapinos, so they look like jalapenos, but they do not have the heat to them. I'm going to make those into little poppers for the kids because I think they'll really like that. And they're almost ready to harvest. They're coming in really thick. We've got banana peppers over here. Definitely some of those ready to harvest. So we'll come through and grab some of those. Kids will eat those. We've also pickled them before, but the kids really just like to eat those raw. This one's even turning colors. So, get some of those for the kids. These are probably one of my favorite peppers to grow. These are corbachi peppers, and they will ripen to oranges and reds. You can eat them like this as well, but they definitely get more sweet and flavorful as they ripen. I love to grow smaller peppers like this because where we are at, you can get a little bit more in your short season if you grow the smaller peppers. And so we've got a couple of plants of the corbachis, and man, are they doing good this year. So we will have a lot of snacking peppers from that. This is one of those notapino plants. So quite a bit happening there. Now we get into the habanadas. These are habaneros without the heat. They look just like a habanero. And these are not my favorite. The kids really like them, and Ryan likes them, so I grow them for them. To me, they taste like perfume. They have a very floral taste to them. So I have a couple plants of that. This one is just getting started. The tiniest little flowers. But this plant has a few on it. And they grow very short and stout here. So that's a really interesting one. Across the way we have Violet Sparkle, I think these are. And the kids have been eating these faster than I can grow them. They get this purple stripe to it. These did not grow very big. I don't know if that's normal. They're pretty small plants, but they are very productive. And so I can't complain too much there. Purple is my favorite color, and so if I find seeds for something that's purple, I'm going to try to grow it. Even better that the kids like it. Over here I have my tried and true bell peppers. These are King of the North. They are designed to grow well in the north, and they do. My plants did not get huge this year, but they are productive. I've got lots of peppers on here. I don't try to grow a lot of big bell peppers, and that's just because they're difficult to get full-sized in our short season. Then I get into the Lesya, I think you say it. L-E-S-Y-A. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it. These grow these really pointed, very sweet peppers. So these will turn red, and they say it's one of the sweetest peppers you can grow. This one was picked out by Harrison several years ago. He wanted to grow these, and they've been really productive and doing great. And so I'm happy that we grew those. I think we have 4 plants of those. The kids are really happy with that. So a couple of lipstick peppers in here. These I've never tried before. We're growing them for the first time this year. We'll see if they turn red. See what we get there. And then these are my mini bell pepper plants. As you can see, those are just loaded with little peppers. These are snackers for the kids. They turn all different colors, and so that's really fun to grow. And again, they're nice and small, they grow well here in the north, and so I always grow mini bells. So that is it for my peppers. 4 rows, and they're pretty productive. I won't get everything that I need to eat for the year, especially for bell peppers. So I buy bell peppers from the farmer's market. I chop them up and I put them with onions in freezer packs, and we use those for fajitas. But the kids will get a lot of snacking out of here, and I should get all of my powdered hot peppers out of here without having to supplement. This little banana pepper is kind of cool. Grew like a little curlicue on top. Okay, now we're going to get into the tomatoes. I'm going to harvest tomatoes today. I'm going to show you just kind of what we've got growing in here by row. So this row is almost entirely pink bumblebee and purple bumblebee cherry tomatoes. And these I use for salsa. These are the pink bumblebees. You can see they just grow in these huge clusters. And they are still loaded with flowers on the top. And with our season, we will get more. They get almost like an orange with a streaking to it. I see this question asked a lot, so I want to talk about this. These look like bugs or disease or something is wrong with your tomato. What this is actually roots coming out of the stem. And this happens when it's either really moist, so like having this grass under here contributes to that, or high humidity, and it's just roots reaching out for water. So if you start seeing this, you don't have to worry about it at all. That is just your plant looking to grab a little bit more water. I love growing heirloom varieties, and I like keeping a lot of different varieties. The added flavor of having a mixture of varieties is just so good. And color. These are the purple bumblebees. They've got more of a green streaking in them. But I love these too. So comparing the pink and the purple. Here I've got another couple of flowers. Okay, my next row down starts with Romas. I will admit I'm struggling a little bit with my Romas and Blossom End Rot. So some of these are perfectly fine, and then I have another plant further down where almost every single one has Blossom End Rot. It is more common with Romas, and usually it happens earlier in the season, and then it kind of evens out as the season goes on. So take those ones with Blossom End Rot and remove them. I also have atomic grapes. My husband likes these. They're harder to tell when they're ripe. Here I've got one that's damaged on the top. Something happened to it. But you can see that orange streaking in there. So that's how you know that they're ripe. This one will go to the chickens. And the rest of them are not there yet. So these do take a while to ripen up. But we still use these for salsa and things. They're still fun to grow. They're a really pretty and prolific tomato to grow, and so I've got a few of those in this row. And these are my black cherries. They've got the darker shoulders and the very red bottom. So cool. Very good for snacking, and we've been using these in our salsa too. So I have a few of those to harvest throughout here. Then we get into this row. And this is my Amish paste row. We have a lot to harvest and a few more that are blushing. We make tons of sauce out of these. They're so meaty and just incredibly productive. These, even for an Amish paste, are huge. I have a lot of blushing ones, but I'm going to leave them out here to sun ripen a little bit longer. This is more the size I would expect for an Amish paste. And this is the size that I'm getting. So that's really, really good. It's got some damage to it. Okay, when you're making sauces, that kind of stuff doesn't matter so much. We get into our larger tomatoes here. Most of this row, I believe, is German reds. So just your standard beefsteak tomato, heirloom variety. It is loaded. They are easily half-pound fruits, possibly more. But nothing is ripening up in here quite yet. These are, here's another one with blossom end rot, so this is what I'm talking about. It gets all moldy and black on the bottom. You want to remove these. This is a calcium deficiency. A lot of times what's actually causing the calcium deficiency is irregular watering. If you're planting outdoors in ground, you can't always stop this because if it rains like a ton, and sometimes it's not in your control. You can add more calcium to the soil, but a lot of times the issue is more that the plant is struggling to uptake calcium. Not necessarily that the calcium isn't there. It's either getting too much water and so it's not bringing up as much calcium and minerals with it, or it's not getting enough water and it can't take up those nutrients. So a lot of times it's not that you have to add a lot of stuff to your soil, it's more of a watering issue. So nice even watering is the best way to prevent this. And sometimes it just happens. It just happens. It's not always within our control. And it's more common in your early season tomatoes and it gets better as the season goes. So that's something to look forward to as well. One thing a lot of people suggest is putting an egg in the hole when you plant your tomato, fertilizes it, and in some form gives calcium. It's debatable whether that first year it's going to give calcium or if it's just a long-term solution, adding those eggshells. I will give you a word of warning before you go and do that. If you have dogs or raccoons or other animals that want to dig up stinky things, do not do the egg in the hole. They will rip up the roots of your plants. I have had animals come in and pull up the entire plant to get underneath it to get that darn egg. And so I stopped doing that a long time ago. What I'm planning to do is only cow compost in the future because we have so much of it. The only things I've used this year was a Shake-On Miracle-Gro pellet. I've done that twice in this greenhouse, and then on some of my plants I have used the rabbit droppings. That's a cold fertilizer, so you can put it directly on your plants, and that's all I've used this year. I haven't supplemented with anything else. So I'm not terribly surprised to see some blossom end rot, and hopefully it will get better as things go on. I water a little bit every night in this high tunnel, and it's been working so far for most of the plants. So I'm just going to stick with that and see how it goes, and then I will dress this all with cow compost at the end of this season, going into next season. Moving on, we're getting into our mushroom basket tomatoes. They have these deep indents in them. I thought they would be hard to peel, but I actually used these last year for crushed tomatoes and they did all right. Got one here ripening, and it is huge. And they're really cool looking, so I have enjoyed growing these. And when you slice them, they're really cool. That next row has those the chickens eating my Black Beauty tomatoes. So nothing real ripe there yet. Moving on, these are Paul Robesons, and so those kind of keep the darker shoulders as well. A little bit more of a smoky flavor. That's a really good flavor to add into your crushed tomatoes or tomato sauce. These are terracotta tomatoes. This one's not totally ripe. It'll take on more of a brown, deeper color. But I'm going to go ahead and pick this and let it ripen on the counter. So these few plants here are terracottas. That was a free seed a couple years ago from Baker Creek, and I have enjoyed growing them. I really do like them. These are Dad's Sunset, I believe. And they are growing really large, but the plants didn't do as well on this end of the high tunnel, which is interesting. They did not grow as big. And then we've got pink ponderosas in here. So that's another beefsteak type tomato that I like to grow. And that takes us to the end of the tomatoes. On the back side here, I planted some cantaloupes, which are growing. These I recently fertilized with the bunny manure, and I've got a bunch of little guys popping up in here. I've got one bigger one back there, and then on the other side of this I have some watermelons. That one I actually have some little watermelons starting. Again, along the same lines of planting smaller varieties of peppers, we plant small varieties of melons because our season is short, and this is the way that we ensure that we actually get some instead of waiting on great big melons to ripen. We have a couple of squash that I planted in here very recently, and they're doing well. And then we've got the rest of our green beans over here. So this is our second round of green beans. Planted about 3 weeks after the first round, so these are not ready for picking yet, but they are flowering. A couple more great big sunflowers. And that's it for the high tunnel. So I say that's it. I feel like I talked for a really long time. This is going to be cranking out even more food as we go. I know we're getting a lot of beans now. We're just starting to get the tomatoes and the peppers, and so this is really going to get going in the next couple of weeks. Okay, I got a pretty good box of goodies out of there. Are you guys doing the Every Bit Counts challenge with Three Rivers Homestead? You should be. This will get me a couple of days worth. Basically the premise of it is if you preserve a little bit every day, you will have an abundance over the winter. And so I've got all this plus my green beans and lots of work to do. So if you've been following us for a while, you know that in April, right when we were about to put this high tunnel up, my husband had a stroke. And thankfully, a lot of you have been asking about him, and he's doing really well. So they found out that his stroke was because he had a hole in his heart, about a centimeter sized hole that he never knew existed, and it allowed a clot to go to his brain. And so once we found out that he had this hole, they were actually able to go in and patch it. So he has got a new patched heart. He's all excited about it. He's feeling great. So the recovery was really short. They did a catheter type procedure on him, and he's doing wonderfully. So for all of you asking, thank you so much for asking and looking out for him, but he is doing awesome. But the reason I bring it up is because we weren't sure if we were even going to have a high tunnel this year. We had it delivered here, it was ready to go, but he got put on lifting restrictions, and it was months before he got his heart surgery. And so we had to call in some help. We had some people come and help us put up the high tunnel. It was a huge blessing to us. But prior to that, I planted a garden in ground on this other side here. I'm going to go show you that. It is a mess. I'm going to tell you that right now. I have not prioritized it because once I got the high tunnel planted, this was top priority. This is what I've been weeding. This is what I've been working on. And I just let the other garden go. But let me show it to you. My first issue with this garden is I planted sunflowers out here last year. I harvested all the large heads, but I left all the little ones in there, and we tilled it in. And I ended up with this huge volunteer sunflower garden. And I am not complaining because holy cow are these beautiful. A lot of them are flowering right now, and a lot of them have multiple heads on them. Some huge, gorgeous sunflowers. But there is an in-ground garden over here. You can hardly tell with all the weeds. These have all died back, and it is time to dig these up. So these are purple potatoes. Got some little ones. So these were overtaken by weeds. You can see weeds everywhere, and I just let it go. So what we get out of here is really a bonus. I paid like $5 for the seed potatoes on here. These are going to be awesome little fried potatoes, and they are kind of like a blue on the inside, so the kids will love this. But today I'm going to have to go through, this goes all the way down, I've got 2 rows, and so we're going to have to dig all these potatoes, and I'm hoping there's some that are bigger. But you get what you put in with gardening sometimes. Sometimes you get lucky. But with this one, I just didn't put a lot into it. And so I don't expect to get a lot out. But we will have lots of little guys in here. And then I do have a couple rows of Yukon Golds as well that are not done yet.
Three more big ones at the least.
I got the kids to help me. We did one row and we got a little batch of potatoes. So not a ton, but this will feed our family. So I'll take it. Food is food. I planted some cucumbers. And these are not really comparable to the ones in the high tunnel, that's for sure. They are trying to flower, and I did fertilize them with rabbit droppings, so we'll see. These I kept weeded pretty well. These are purple cauliflower, and got some stinging nettle in here, but otherwise these have been producing little heads of cauliflower, and the boys eat them as fast as they come up. So not a lot of successes in this part, but enough that it was still worth planting, I feel like. Now, deep in all of these sunflowers, which sunflowers take a huge amount of nutrients, so it's really hard to grow things next to them or with them. So I made a choice when I let these take over, because they are growing right over top of my first batch of tomatoes here. And so I've got one row of cherry tomatoes and one row of larger tomatoes. You can hardly see them in here, but they are growing and they are producing, which is just wild. I kept this weeded for the first maybe month, and then all of the sunflowers were growing so large and taking so much nutrients, I said, forget it. I've got tomatoes in the high tunnel. We're just giving up on this one. And so I am super happy that we're actually getting tomatoes out of here, because I don't know, it's amazing to me that it survived at all. Oh, look here. These are zucchinis that I actually forgot existed, and there's actually a zucchini on there. I'll have to remember to come out and get that one tomorrow, because I think tomorrow will be big enough. But yeah, there's a couple little squash plants in here, but I kind of just wrote those off too. I did not think that anything would come of them in this mess. But you can kind of see some of the flowers down there. Maybe they'll do something. But yeah, if this is what your garden looks like, that is okay. Can easily get away from you. There's Romas in here. They're growing. I don't know. Here's some. These are atomic grapes. I didn't even stake this up. But they're growing. And then I have these down here. These are little gold rush tomatoes. And they're almost like a little spoon tomato, but they're yellow. And look at the branches of those that are growing. So plants want to grow. They want to put out seed. They want to produce their fruit. And so I guess even in a totally unkept garden, you can still get a little bit. I came through this side last night and weeded a little bit. But, I mean, you can barely tell. But I will trade it all for the sunflowers. I don't mind. So that was my original garden that I planted as I'm gonna have a garden, even if I don't get my high tunnel. This stuff I planted afterwards, so we have a whole row of Yukon Gold potatoes. So these are my favorite potatoes. They don't store quite as long, but they're that nice gold buttery flavor. I love them. I have a row of zinnias in here, you cannot tell. And then I spread some more sunflower seeds through here. So these I planted, so they will flower after all the rest of these are done. And so I'm excited for a little second stage batch of sunflowers. This right here was a compost pile that I guess had pumpkin seeds in it because it grew a pumpkin village. I thinned these out quite a bit when they first started growing. They were just full of pumpkins right now. The pumpkins that I planted this year are not doing this well. I've course. But these are growing straight in a compost pile, so that, I mean, that makes a difference. And this was all yard compost, so no animal compost other than bunnies. We were throwing bunny litter in here as well. But lots of flowers, lots of things going. We have everything from little guys in here to much bigger ones. This thing is massive and just a volunteer pumpkin. That thing is going to grow for another 2 months. It's going to be huge. So this was a really cool, fun surprise, and the kids will get some good carvers out of here. Maybe we'll sell some pumpkins, I don't know. Looks like we're going to have enough. So we're kind of behind the high tunnel now. This is our orchard. The back row is all different apples. And then we've got 2 pears, 2 cherries, and 2 peaches. The real little ones over there are peach trees. And everything's growing pretty good right now. And then we have the pumpkin patch that we planted with just a whole variety of pumpkins in here and squashes. These are my favorites. These are the winter luxury pie pumpkins. They have not started putting on pumpkins yet, but they are flowering. And so I've got quite a few plants in these. Those are my favorite pie pumpkins. They grow really well here. These are a green pumpkin, like those jade green pumpkins. And so far I'm seeing mostly male flowers. Hopefully those will take off soon. And then back here I've got more Connecticut field pumpkins. The plants are huge. And just the very starts of pumpkins on there. And then my plan for over here is to do rows of blueberry bushes. Wouldn't that be cool? And have a door out the back here. I planted a couple blueberries along the high tunnel, but they are not producing yet. They're very, they had a rough transplant. They're not doing the greatest. I also have a couple honeyberries over here. But my plan for this whole area here behind the high tunnel is to make it kind of a fruit oasis. And then as we spread out, so we'll have all blueberries, and then it'll run into our apple trees and fruit trees. And so that's my plan for this area. And I hope I left myself enough space. Along the side of our high tunnel, we run our meat birds. So they're coming out today. They're in the barn. They're still little. This is our 3rd batch. If you're looking for chicken here in northern Wisconsin, north central Wisconsin, we have a ton. Okay, I've got a bunch of whole chickens and we've got them available. Check out our Facebook and you can get in touch with us and pick them up at the farm stand. So we don't do farmers markets at this point in time. We only run a little farm stand on our road. Mostly our neighbors stopping by and grabbing things. And we really like it that way for now. And most of this is produced for our family. Thank you so much for coming along with me, showing off my pride and joy. I really do love gardening. I didn't start until about 8 years ago. When my second was a baby, I had a little 4-foot by 4-foot garden, and that's what started it all. And I have really just grown to love it. It is my happiest place, and so I'm so happy I got to share it with you guys today. And thank you for following along. As I mentioned before, we are on Facebook and also on Instagram. But we would really love if you were subscribed here on YouTube, following our adventures. We are first-generation homesteaders getting our start on this old dairy farm in Wisconsin, and we are having the best time, and I love to share it with you guys. So thank you so much for being here, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye, guys.